So as mentioned, you might have heard already in the news the proposed amendments by the government to these two laws, and we will review in detail what direction this might be headed. However, I would like to stress from the very beginning that whatever intentions might lie beneath these two proposals, the final output can be markedly different from the situation that we know of and that is presented today. On June 23rd, the government came with these proposals and divided into these four points. Okay. Residence permits, special police department, creation of special police department, citizenship, and immigration. So although a few, well, I don't know how many of you might know or not, but yesterday, the extension of the validity of residence permits was finally published. Okay. So this means that this extension will cover period from July 1st till October 15th. Government believes this is ample time to allow for the processing of the backlog. And that's why they've chosen this date instead of the full semester. Whether that will be the case, we can only hope, wait and see. But for the time being, that's what we will have to work with. Then we're also waiting for the creation of the platform that would allow renewals, the submission of renewals. Once this submission has been effectively lodged, each applicant will get receipt, and that will grant that 6-month extension. Okay, so key takeaways here, we have one general extension until October 15, and then once the platform becomes available and those who have a card are in a position to renew the card, then there will be individual extensions of 6 months. With regard to the Special Police Department, as you might recall, back at the end of 2023, when CEF became extinct and DAIMA was created, all the different duties under the purview of CEF were assigned to about 7 separate departments. Okay. And it is believed, at least by the current government, that a police force with complete supervision of these matters, immigration, aliens control, control of airport borders, and the return of immigrants in irregular situation was needed. So again, some reunification there of all these different duties. With regard to citizenship, the proposed amendments are several. Number one, the increase of a minimum legal residency requirement from 5 to 7 years in the case of citizens from Portuguese-speaking countries, and 10 years for citizens of any other countries. And the computation would be from the moment of issuance of the residence permit, okay, instead of the moment of payment of the application fee, which was the motivation behind the latest amendment back in April of 2024. Okay. No citizenship would be granted to applicants with sentences to actual and effective imprisonment. And the proposal also contains the termination of the regime for Sephardic Jews. That will not affect any of you, but nevertheless, and just for sakeness of completion, this is what's intended. For the purpose of the actual application, as you all know, there's a requirement, and this will be maintained, knowledge of Portuguese language, which, as we know, is that certificate that attests A2 level, an A2 level in Portuguese language. And then links to Portugal, and all of you, of course, have these links to Portugal via your different investments. The government has proposed a new exam similar to what might exist in the US regarding constitution and the rights and obligations of Portuguese citizens. Okay, so we don't know very much about this proposal. Again, these are very generic guidelines that will be debated in Parliament. And there's also, the government also would like to introduce a solemn declaration of adherence to the fundamental principles of the democratic rule of law. That is similar as well to what other countries do, such as France, where new citizens sign a contract with the French Republic. This is inspired in the same motivations. With regard to citizenship through ancestry, okay, the government would like to cap it great-grandchildren, which we're already looking at 4 generations. So here, actually, this specific route towards citizenship is quite comprehensive. Then, in the case of minors born in Portugal, the proposal would like to introduce a higher residency requirement for foreign parents. And this would be 3 years before applying, 4 years for stateless persons. But again, this does signify an increase from the current 1 year, even without a formal legal status, moving on to 3 years with an actual formal legal status. Again, a few details of the proposal that do not really affect you. Abrogation of naturalization for Portuguese citizens who lost their citizenship back in the date of the Portuguese Revolution, and there will also be a new form of naturalization that regards relevant service to the Portuguese state. And citizenship will be revoked through a court order only, of course, if you have obtained your citizenship less than 10 years ago and you were sentenced to effective imprisonment. Okay, so obviously, I don't count on that happening to anyone here present. With regard to citizenship via attribution, again, descendants of foreigners living in Portugal, parents must have had legal residence for at least 3 years, and there has to be a specific statement by the parents expressing that wish for their child to become a Portuguese citizen. Moving on to the Immigration Act, 3 changes affect family reunification, job seeker visa, and the visa for citizens of Portuguese-speaking countries. And as we will see, these will not affect golden visa applicants in any way. So the general idea here is that the main applicant will have to be a legal resident for at least 2 years before applying for family reunification. The following categories are accepted: family members of holders of permits for teaching purposes, and this is for higher education; highly qualified activities, so family members of those main applicants who are involved in these highly qualified activities or professions; and golden visa applicants, which means that all of these three groups can apply from Portugal, and at the same time, the main applicant is actually applying. Okay. Then the whole purpose is that, well, the integration measures must be provided for family. This, of course, includes language learning and compulsory education. The current system of tacit approval is eliminated. And well, some of you might recall that we have been using what should be a purportedly express proceeding for the protection of rights and freedoms. Okay. So we've used this special proceeding extensively for those of you who had pending appointments, and in order to secure that appointment. Now, of course, due to the massive use of this specific proceeding, we've basically changed or switched from one queue to another. And what the government intends to do is eliminate, first of all, the system of tacit approval, extend the deadline for analysis, processing, review of files to 9 months with a possibility of extension. And as I was saying before, the elimination of that special proceeding, and we would be left with the standard proceeding as per the several tools that the administrative code allows. Okay. Job seeker visa, again, this will not apply to any of you, but again, for sakeness of completion purposes, those people, those job seekers who would be using or have been using this entry route until now with no other requirements, now will have to justify that according to the new provision to be created by the government, that they fall in the category of these so-called highly qualified individuals. Again, little is known at this stage yet. And then the visa that affects citizens of Portuguese speaking countries. And the change here is that while there will be an exemption for AIMA's opinion with regard to this specific type of visa, however, the border unit of internal security system will still be required to issue its own opinion. And any applications will have to take place in the home country and no longer within Portugal itself. So, as mentioned, we are still at a very early stage. The proposal has been remitted to Parliament. A discussion will ensue at different levels. First, a committee will actually be reviewing these proposals. These will be refined and then debated by the whole Parliament and then back to the committee itself. Although it has been said that the government would like to skip some of these phases because they have made it a priority. So How does it look in terms of votes? Well, regarding and specifically the Citizenship Act, this type of law requires a majority, so 113 seats. The government does not have that majority in parliament and would have to reach some sort of consensus with other parties. That, well, remains to be seen. So whatever draft has reached the parliament right now does not mean that it will be approved as is. Okay, it is expected that it will change, and specifically an opportunity given for either a grandfathering solution or perhaps some carving out for golden visa applicants as well. Okay. Again, all of this remains to be seen. It's just a very early stage that we're in, and therefore best not to give in to speculation. What I can say is that with regard to similar changes, and perhaps the most recent one that I can refer to is the amendment to the Golden Visa program back in the first semester of 2023. You might recall there was a lot of chaos initially due to the announcement that the government would actually terminate the Golden Visa program and that new applications would not be allowed, and that this law would have retroactive effects. Now, this whole deal with retroactivity was, of course, blatantly unconstitutional and therefore did not uh, did not survive the government's original intention. And here we're facing a similar situation whereby the current government intends to also apply these rules retroactively, specifically with regard to the Citizenship Act, to avoid a last minute rush. Again, these are the exact same motives that we heard back in February of 2023 with regard to the termination of the Golden Visa program. And of course, the same principle of non-retroactivity stands. So we don't really believe that will go through or that will be able to hold, specifically if, as it might happen, if the bill is remitted to the Constitutional Court for assessment. Okay. So once we get to that final stage where the bill is approved, then the president has to take one of three options. Number one, enact the law as is, then it will be published in the official gazette, and usually there is some gap or lag between date of publishing and date of entry into force of the law. We don't know at this stage how quickly that or how long that gap might actually be. Nevertheless, we do know for a fact that the government would, or intends at least, to pass this bill as quickly as possible. Number two, veto the bill. So the president has the possibility, it's a one-time veto, and nonetheless, the parliament may override the veto. Okay, but this would delay things. And number three, request the Constitutional Court to assess the bill, which would not only have the effect of further delay, but will also, of course, or could also have serious impact on the actual wording of the law. Okay. So in terms of recommendations, for any of you who might be close to or may have already completed 5 years of residency, then please consider moving forward quickly as possible. We will be, of course, monitoring any changes, any updates, and of course, take necessary steps towards protection of your rights and interests, depending on how far uh, this proposal goes in terms of surviving the or retaining rather the original wording. But the legal community has already expressed strong opposition to legal technique with which these proposals have been formed. And therefore, regardless of what we might think of the content of the proposal itself and whether any government, of course, has the legitimacy to take whatever measures it might deem reasonable. Nevertheless, as mentioned, some of these proposals might be contested in court. Okay, so whether this announcement has a shock value, just as the February 2023 Golden Visa termination announcement had also had a shock value and was intended to deter new applicants, this might be behind the same idea, but nevertheless, here we are. So, of course, as mentioned, we will be looking into this with great detail, reaching out with other colleagues in the legal profession, and we will keep you updated for the next few weeks and months, depending on which route this will actually follow. Okay, so that is what we know for now, and the whole purpose of today's session is just to provide information. And again, you might be hearing things, you might be getting information from different sources. What I've presented right now is what we know today, which we expect will evolve over the next weeks. And therefore, I would not like anyone to give in to any wild speculation. So that's all the information I have to share with you right now. Of course, I'm happy to take any questions. So please feel free to jump in if you'd like to.
Hi, Antonio.
Yes,
How are you doing?
hi, Johannes.
Yes. My case, right? What is this new regulation, so-called, will have is there any implication for us, like, especially for my family, right?
Yeah,
Which subsequent.
yeah. Well, again, the main intention in terms of the Golden Visa program is right now unknown because we don't know at this stage if there might be an exception afforded to Golden Visa applicants. That's number one. Or number two, if those who are already in the process will benefit from some grandfathering solution. Okay. Taken at face value. So, and looking at this proposal as is, if it were to be approved as is, the main implication would be the rise in the number of years needed towards securing citizenship. Okay. Having said so, it is still too early to make that kind of assessment. Okay. So we'll just have to, for the time being, wait and see. I know there's been a lot of waiting for all of you, and believe me, it has not been easy on our side, and we've had many, many sleepless nights pondering over all these difficulties we've been facing since COVID, really. And therefore, based on the other amendments that I've just gone through, my advice is, as of now, simply um, wait and see, but also, nevertheless, for those who might be close to that citizenship application, then get your paperwork ready. Okay. Now, in terms of paperwork, a few items are relatively easy to obtain. These would be criminal records. And remember, for citizenship purposes, it's not just a criminal record of your home country, but of any country you've lived in for at least 1 year. Okay. Birth certificate, and this is for any applicant of citizenship. So the criminal record and the birth certificate, and then the um, language certificate. Yeah, so if any of you still missing that piece of documentation, then I would advise to enroll in one of the accredited courses for that very purpose.